Out here, calm is never real. The Arctic has a way of tricking you, making you think you're safe, when really it's just holding its breath. Waiting. The ice was still tonight, smooth and flat under a dim midnight sun that barely skimmed the horizon, smearing the sky with pale gold. From the deck of Oceanic Driller 7, the world felt endless in all directions. Nothing but ice, water, and the kind of silence that gets into your head. We weren't an oil rig anymore. Not really. Last year, the company scrapped the drilling program, claiming oil wasn't worth the risk this far north. Instead, they gave us something cutting edge. We were told we'd be tapping into the planet itself, pulling heat from deep underground through a massive trench they'd found on sonar. The scar. That's what we called it. A chasm so long and perfectly straight it looked unnatural, like someone had dragged a knife through the ocean floor. The new thermal extraction array was my responsibility. I'd overseen its installation myself. Miles of reinforced piping sunk into the scar, insulated to withstand pressure that would crush a submarine. Superheated water traveled up those pipes, spinning turbines and powering the station. Clean, safe, efficient. At least that's what the corporate videos promised. 6 months I'd been here long enough to memorize the shift rotations, the coffee preferences, the stupid inside jokes of every single one of the 32 people on board. You have to know people out here. You have to. There's nowhere to hide from each other when you're sealed inside a floating box in the middle of nowhere. I'm Maravance, chief engineer, unofficial morale officer, and the person everyone comes to when something breaks, which is most days. And today, like most days, had been normal enough. Tightening bolts, recalibrating pressure gauges, cleaning the filters on the heat exchangers. No drama, no surprises. But lately, there had been something. First, it was small. One of the maintenance guys, Chow, swore he'd been hearing air in the lines. We vented the pipes. Nothing. Then someone else said they'd heard it, too. Except it wasn't hissing this time. It was voices. I laughed it off at first. The human brain is great at turning random noise into something familiar, especially when you're exhausted. But a week ago, I stayed late in the machine bay, leaning against the main flow pipe, coffee in hand. That's when I heard it for myself. Faint. So faint I almost thought I imagined it. A low murmur, like someone speaking far away, deep in the metal. I pressed my ear closer and I could swear my name was in there somewhere. I told myself it was stress, Arctic isolation, but it didn't stop. And then yesterday, during routine water sampling, we noticed the color. Normally, Arctic water is black, sometimes a greenish-gray if the light hits it right. But near the rig, it had changed. A strange dark indigo spreading outward like an oil slick. I tested it for contamination. Nothing unusual in the results. But my gut said otherwise. I didn't make a report. People out here don't need more reasons to get jumpy. The cold, the darkness, the miles of ice, those were enough. It was quiet tonight. The kind of quiet that wraps around you. The air outside was still. But inside the rig, the low thrum of machinery was constant. Comforting. I was in the workshop wiping down a set of wrenches when it happened. At first, I thought a turbine had failed. The floor under my boots started to hum deep and heavy. The kind of vibration you feel in your ribs. The tools on the bench rattled against each other. My coffee trembled in its cup. Then the sound came. It wasn't a siren. Not the sharp blare of the storm alarms. Not the fast, high-pitched fire signal. This was lower, slower. A deep metallic pulse that rolled through the rig like a heartbeat. Music it made the walls vibrate. Made my teeth ache. Every few seconds. Thudded it again. the air shaking with it. The overhead lights flickered. Somewhere above me, I heard shouting, boots hammering the grates. Then the speakers crackled to life. A voice, synthetic and too calm for what it was saying, filled every corridor. Emergency alert. Containment integrity breach in progress. Protocol status unknown. The voice faded, replaced by that same gut-deep pulse. Then it repeated. Emergency alert. Containment integrity breach in progress. Protocol status unknown. I froze. We all knew the alarms for fire, for flood, for hull breach. There wasn't one for containment integrity. Hell, no one even talked about containment on this rig. The message looped again. Every time it ended, that low pulse followed. The sound seemed to crawl through the walls, through the steel beneath my feet. I grabbed the nearest comm unit. Control. This is Vance. What the hell is going on? The reply was just static at first. Then a voice came through. Harris, one of the night shift supervisors. He sounded wrong. Tight. We don't know. Systems are normal. There's nothing in the logs. But you need to get to the command deck now. The line went dead. I stepped into the hallway. The sound still reverberating around me. The lights dimmed again, buzzing faintly, and then I heard it. From somewhere deep below, through the maze of pipes and heat exchangers, came a sound that wasn't mechanical. It was too long, too organic. A slow exhale, rising up through the steel, heavy and deliberate. I stopped mid-step, one hand against the wall, my stomach tightening. The pulse came again, shaking the floor, followed by the voice over the speakers repeating the same words in that steady, emotionless tone. Containment integrity breach in progress. Protocol status unknown. Boots thundered on the deck above. I caught fragments of voices. Confusion, anger, fear. But none of it made sense. Whatever this was, no one had been trained for it. I headed for the command deck, passing two of the younger techs on the way. Their eyes were wide, their faces pale. One of them muttered, "I think it's coming from the scar," before the other elbowed him quiet. We all knew the scar was dangerous. You don't drill into something like that without risk. But dangerous. We could understand. Pressure bursts, mechanical failure, blowouts. This was different. As I climbed the stairs to the deck, the floor trembled again. But it wasn't just the pulse this time. There was a secondary vibration underneath it. Softer, irregular, like something moving in the water. I didn't realize I'd stopped walking until someone's hand landed on my shoulder. I turned and found Captain Rohr, our operations lead, staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. He didn't say hello, didn't even look surprised to see me there. "You heard it?" he asked. I nodded. He glanced at the ceiling speaker as the pulse rolled through again. The calm voice announcing the breach for the 6th time since it started. Rohr's jaw tightened. "We're not supposed to get that alert ever." The way he said it made something cold settle in my chest. "Then what the hell does it mean?" I asked. His eyes flicked to the deck plates beneath our feet as if he could see straight through to the ocean below. "It means..." He hesitated. "It means someone lied to us about what we're sitting on." Another pulse shook the deck harder this time, and the lights above us buzzed, dimmed, then flared back bright. Somewhere far below, that same long, drawn-out exhale drifted up through the metal. I didn't know it yet, but that was the last moment the rig felt anything like normal. The command deck was chaos, but not the loud kind you'd expect when 32 people are trapped on a rig that's suddenly screaming about a containment breach. It was quiet, too quiet, like everyone was afraid to speak above a certain volume. The pulse rolled through the floor again, and every head twitched just slightly with it. like we were all being moved by the same invisible string. Most of the crew was there. Harris at the controls, eyebrows pulled tight. Celia from comms with both headsets pressed against her ears like she was trying to hear through the static. Rafi from maintenance pacing so fast I thought he'd wear a trench into the floor. What the hell's going on? I asked, my voice sounding louder than I meant it to in the tense air. Harris just shook his head. No mechanical faults. No pressure loss. Power steady. Arrays reading normal heat transfer. This he gestured toward the ceiling speaker, which dutifully repeated the same calm warning. This isn't coming from us. Not coming from us. I stepped closer, trying to keep my voice level. It's our alarm system. No, Celia said without looking up. It's not. That stopped me cold. Come again. Her fingers tightened around the headset. This feed isn't in the system. It's hardwired. The broadcast is originating from somewhere in the substructure below the primary housing. Lower than any living quarters or mechanical bays. We don't have access to those sections. I didn't even know they existed. Roar moved to the center of the deck. His face was unreadable, but I could tell he'd known something. They're not on the official schematics, he said, but they've been here since before the retrofit. Retrofit. That was when they'd converted the rig from oil to geothermal. I looked at him, and you didn't think to mention that. Before he could answer, another pulse rattled through the deck. This one hard enough to make a mug fall off a console and shatter. Everyone jumped. I swear the pulse was getting stronger. From the far corner, Yates, the youngest of the crew, spoke up. You think this is about the scar? A few heads turned toward him, but no one answered. What else could it be? Rafi muttered. I'd been staring at the instrument panels, not really seeing them. Then my eyes caught something on the environmental display. A faint shift in water temperature. Just a fraction of a degree. Radiating out from the trench. That shouldn't happen. The water up here is so cold and so still that it takes massive changes to make even that kind of difference. Look at this, I said, pointing. Harris leaned over, swore under his breath. That's not thermal bleed from the array, I said. It's coming from the trench itself. And then Celia pulled the headset from her ears and set it down slowly like she was afraid it would bite. Her face had gone pale. I heard something. Not static. Not interference. Something speaking. It wasn't English. I don't think it was human. A chill slid down my spine. But before I could say anything, the deck lights flickered again. Once. Twice. And went out completely. For 3 long seconds. The only illumination came from the pale green glow of emergency strips along the floor. In that brief darkness, the pulse sounded deeper, heavier, like it was right inside my skull. And then, just faintly under the sound, I thought I heard the same thing Celia had. Low, deliberate syllables that made my stomach knot. When the lights came back, everyone was looking around like they weren't sure if they'd imagined it. We need to shut down the array, I said. Harris shook his head. Already tried. Controls are locked out. Command access only. I turned to Roar, then unlock it. He met my eyes, and in that moment I knew. We can't, he said. Not when this alert is active. That's the design. And before you ask, I didn't design it. I was told never to override it. By who? I asked. The parent company. He hesitated. And someone else. The government. Maybe they called it Protocol Lazarus. The word stuck in my mind. Lazarus. Like coming back from the dead. Before I could press him further, a voice came over the intercom. A voice none of us recognized. It was male. Clipped. And calm in a way that made my skin crawl. Attention crew of Oceanic Driller 7. Do not attempt to reinforce containment. Remain at stations until further instructions. Do not leave the structure. The channel clicked off, leaving silence except for the now relentless pulse. No one moved for a moment. Then Yates said quietly, "What's down there?" Roar didn't answer right away. He moved to the side panel, unlocked a drawer, and pulled out a thick weathered binder. It looked ancient compared to the rest of the equipment. Leather-bound, fraying at the edges. He set it down on the central table and opened it. Inside were photographs, black and white shots of the Arctic from decades ago and sketches of something massive and jagged rising out of the water. "This was here before us," he said. "Before the first oil platform. Before sonar. The scar isn't natural." He turned a page and there were more sketches. Humanoid shapes carved into what looked like stone tablets, each one kneeling toward a black slit in the ground. In some the slit was closed. In others, something like a spiral rose from it. "This is from a whaling ship that went missing out here in 1892. Roar continued. "They found the logbook inside the foundation during the retrofit. The ship's last entries talked about an opening in the ice. They threw their catch overboard. Said it was an offering. Then the crew disappeared. The pulse came again and I realized it had sped up just slightly." Celia pointed to another page in the binder. This one a typewritten memo. The paper yellowed with age. Most of it was blacked out. But one line was clear. "If Alert 7 activates, initiate Protocol Lazarus. Do not attempt to reinforce containment." My stomach tightened. "What's down there?" Before Roar could answer, the rig shook. Not from the pulse this time, but from something else. Something hitting us. The impact came from below. A sharp upward jolt that made the whole deck lurch. Several people stumbled. A clipboard clattered to the floor. Then came the sound. It wasn't the long exhale this time. It was louder, sharper, like metal grinding, but wet somehow, echoing up through the substructure. Harris checked the depth sensors, then froze. "There's movement in the scar." "How much movement?" I asked. He looked up, eyes wide. "The array is shifting." That wasn't possible. The pipes were bolted into the seabed, anchored into rock. Another impact rattled the deck harder this time. Somewhere deep below, something groaned. A long metallic moan that set every nerve in my body on edge. "We need to evacuate," Celia said. "And go where?" Rafi snapped. "We're iced in for 50 m. No choppers. No boats. We're stuck here." The lights flickered again. And this time, they didn't come back all the way. The emergency strips glowed brighter, painting the deck in sickly green. The pulse rolled through again. Faster now. And under it, I heard that same strange syllabic sound. Like language, but not. Roar shut the binder with a snap. "All right," he said. We split into 3 teams. One to the array controls to try manual shutdown. One to monitor the environmental changes. And one with me to the substructure access. If there's a breach, we need to see it. I didn't like it, but standing here doing nothing was worse. "I'll take the array team," I said. Roar nodded. "Good. Keep your comms open and whatever you see. Remember the memo. Do not reinforce containment." The words didn't sit right, but there wasn't time to argue. The next pulse hit faster still, and it felt like the rig itself was matching its rhythm. Somewhere deep below, the long exhale came again. Louder now, like it was closer. The lower access corridors always felt different from the rest of the rig. Up top, the air smelled faintly of diesel and coffee. The walls humming with familiar vibrations from the turbines. Down here, it was colder, quieter, like the rig itself was holding its breath. My boots echoed on the grating as I led my team, Cow and Lutz, toward the array control chamber. The green glow from the emergency strips threw long shadows on the walls, making the pipes seem like ribs of some great beast we were walking through. Every so often, a pulse rolled through the metal under our feet, and I could feel it in my knees, a pressure that seemed to press up through the soles of my boots and into my bones. "You hear that?" Chow whispered at one point. "I hear a lot of things," I muttered, not slowing. "No, I mean..." He stopped mid-step, head tilting toward a large steam conduit on our left. "It's talking." I didn't want to hear it, but I did. Faint under the constant background thrum of the rig was a slow string of syllables. Soft, deliberate, and wrong. It didn't sound recorded. It sounded alive. Lutz swore under his breath and picked up the pace. I didn't tell them I'd heard the same thing earlier. Saying it out loud made it too real. We reached the array chamber, a vast cylindrical room that descended 3 decks lined with steel gantries and ladders. In the center was the primary control unit, a tower of pressure valves, heat gauges, and flow meters, all feeding into a bank of consoles. Above it, through a grated skylight, you could see the tops of the main pipes vanishing into the rig's superstructure before plunging into the ocean below. The first thing I noticed was that all the readouts were wrong. Not in the obvious way. Nothing flashing red. No screaming alarms. But in the quiet way, where you knew the numbers didn't make sense. Flow rates were steady, but temperatures from the deepest sections of the scar were climbing slowly. Steadily. "That's not possible," Lutz muttered, leaning in over one of the screens. "We're pulling heat from the crust, not the other way around." Chow checked a secondary panel, then looked at me with wide eyes. "The array is not just pulling water up. Something else is pushing back." I swallowed, stepping up to the main console. The override was there under a sealed panel. But when I keyed in my code, the screen flashed. "Access denied. Alert 7. Override locked." Roar was right, I said. "We can't shut it down from here." As if to punctuate the point, another pulse rolled through, stronger than before, making the gantries creak. Somewhere far below, the sound of that long, deliberate exhale drifted up through the structure again. But now it was followed by something else. A low, resonant hum that made my skin crawl. Chow stepped toward the edge of the central shaft, looking down into the darkness below. "You see that?" I joined him and looked down. At first, I thought it was just the emergency lights catching the mist rising from the deeper levels. But no, the light was moving. Glowing shapes drifted upward through the shaft, pale blue and softly pulsing like deep-sea creatures rising from the abyss. They swirled slowly, almost lazily, but the sight of them filled me with a sharp primal dread. Bioluminescent organisms, Lutz offered weakly, but even he didn't sound convinced. "I mean, they found stuff like this in deep trenches before. Not here," I said, backing away. "The scar is too deep for anything to survive. And those things aren't drifting with the current. They're moving against it." A sudden jolt shook the entire chamber. One of the pressure gauges slammed to the red, then fell back to normal. From somewhere below, metal groaned under strain. I grabbed my comm. "Dancer. Manual override failed. We've got rising temps in the deepest segments and biological activity in the shaft. Strong movement upward." The line crackled. Then Roar's voice came through, tense and low. "Copy. We've reached the substructure. There's a sealed hatch down here. Looks like it hasn't been opened in decades. It's humming." Another pulse rolled through, and I swear it was faster again. Closer to a heartbeat than a warning signal. Now underneath it, faint but growing, was that alien language. The syllables stretching and bending like they were echoing through water. Lutz stepped back from the console. "We need to get out of here." Whatever's happening. We don't want to be this close when he didn't finish, because that's when the floor shuddered violently. The gantries clanged as bolts strained against their fittings. Somewhere above us, a thick length of piping screamed as metal tore and a cloud of steam exploded into the chamber. Scalding hot. Go! I shouted, yanking Chow toward the exit. The pulse was pounding now, so strong I could feel it in my jaw. And the language beneath it had become clearer. Slow. Rhythmic. Like a chant. We bolted into the corridor. The air thick with steam and the sound of groaning metal. As we ran, I caught sight of something moving along the pipe walls. A shimmer of blue light sliding through the steel like it wasn't even there. It traveled faster than we could run, flickering in and out of sight. Don't look at it, Chow yelled over his shoulder. By the time we reached the mid-level stairwell, my radio was alive with overlapping voices. Harris shouting about temperature spikes in all quadrants. Celia saying, "They're in the water intakes." And Rafi, his voice raw, "It's inside the substructure. It's not sealed anymore." We climbed fast, my legs burning, the stairwell vibrating under the constant pulse. At the top, Rafi nearly collided with us, his eyes wide and frantic. says, "Protocol Lazarus is the only way." "What is Protocol Lazarus?" I demanded. His face twisted. "Self-destruct. Collapse the scar." Chow swore under his breath. "That'll kill all of us. Better than the alternative," Rafi said. Before I could argue, a sharp crack echoed through the rig. Loud. Close. Like a massive cable snapping. Then the deck under our feet tilted sharply, throwing us all to the side. My shoulders slammed into the wall as alarms began blaring over the constant pulse. Structural shift. Lutz gasped, pulling himself up. Something's pulling on us from below. The pulse boomed again, louder than ever. And this time, it wasn't followed by the chant. It was followed by silence. Heavy, suffocating silence that lasted just long enough for my heartbeat to become the loudest thing in my ears. Then the long exhale came again. But now it was joined by another sound. A slow rising vibration, like something massive was waking up. I looked at Rafi, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked genuinely afraid. "If we're doing Lazarus," he said, "we're out of time." The command deck was a storm of movement when we burst in. Shouting voices, screens flashing red. Every console alive with warnings I'd never seen before. The pulse still beat through the floor. But now it was irregular, like it was reacting to what was happening on the rig. It made my stomach feel like it was swaying even when I was standing still. Roar was at the central console, binder open beside him, barking orders into his comm. Harris was trying to run manual diagnostics. Celia was frantically swapping between headset frequencies. And Yates, pale, sweating, was clutching a fire axe like it was a lifeline. "What's the situation?" I shouted over the noise. Roar's eyes found mine. "The substructure hatch is open. I don't know how, but it's open." The scars filling with movement readings. Massive movement. Harris pointed to the environmental display. The indigo bloom around the rig was growing darker, denser, spreading faster than before. At its center, where the scar lay, the water temperature had spiked 3 full degrees. "Lazarus," Rafi said, out of breath behind me. "We need to do it now." The room went quiet at that word, except for the constant rumble from below. Roar's jaw clenched. "Once we initiate, there's no stopping it. The charges will collapse the trench. Take the rig with it. That's 200 m of steel and machinery going straight down." Celia pulled her headset away from her ears slowly, staring at nothing. "It doesn't want us to," she whispered. I froze. "What?" Her gaze flicked to mine, pupils huge. The voice, I can understand some of it now. It's telling us to leave it alone, not to bury it. A cold ripple slid down my spine. You can't understand something that doesn't speak our language. She shook her head. I shouldn't be able to, but I can. It's in my head. Roar slammed his palm on the table, snapping everyone's attention back. Enough. Whatever it is. Lazarus is the only way to contain it. Harris, prep the detonator. Harris hesitated. Sir, what if she's right? What if burying it makes it worse? Another jolt rocked the rig harder than before. The deck under us groaned. And somewhere deep below, the steel screamed as if something enormous had scraped against it. The pulse slammed through us again. Faster now. And under it came that alien chant. Louder. More insistent. As if it were aware of what we were doing. I stepped closer to Roar. If we're doing this, we need to be damn sure. We set Lazarus off without knowing what's down there. We might not just kill ourselves. We might open it wider. He didn't answer right away. He looked down at the binder at a page with that typewritten memo. Do not attempt to reinforce containment. His lips moved like he was reading something only he could see. Then another alarm cut through everything. A piercing klaxon from the array systems. Harris turned to the screen and swore. Pressure surge in the primary pipes. Reverse flow. Is pushing water back up at twice the intake rate. Shut the valves. I ordered. Already tried. Harris said, hammering at the controls. No response. On the external cameras. We saw it. A column of water boiling up from the scar. Glowing faintly in that same unnatural blue as the shapes we'd seen earlier. The water hammered the underside of the rig, sending sprays into the air. And with it came debris that didn't make sense. Chunks of black stone carved with the same kneeling figures from the binder sketches. Celia backed away from the screens. Her voice small. It's waking up. The deck tilted again, sending a stack of tool crates crashing to the floor. The lights dimmed and flared. And for a split second, every screen showed static. Then something else. An image so brief I thought I'd imagined it. A black slit in the ocean floor. Edges jagged. Something vast and coiled shifting in the dark behind it. Roar's decision came fast after that. Harris. Lazarus. Now. Harris hesitated one last time. Then keyed in a long sequence. A red panel flipped open on the console, revealing a single black switch under a plastic guard. He looked at Roar, who gave a single sharp nod. Harris lifted the guard. Before he could flip it, the floor beneath us bucked, throwing half the crew to the ground. A sound like tearing metal roared up through the rig, and the pulse cut out completely, replaced by a deep, steady vibration that rattled my teeth. The air felt heavier, like the oxygen had thickened. Celia screamed suddenly, clutching her head. It's angry. Roar grabbed Harris's hand, forcing it to the switch. Do it. The switch slammed down. The overhead lights flickered and a deep thud reverberated through the structure as charges planted along the trench walls armed themselves. A timer appeared on the main screen. 0000500. 5 minutes, Harris said, his voice flat. Another impact shuddered through the rig. On the cameras, we could see the water around us swirling. Darker shapes moving under the surface. The indigo had gone almost black. The glow from below pulsing like a heartbeat. Then one of the cameras went out. Not from static, but because something had struck it hard. The feed cut just as a massive shadow passed under the rig, blotting out the glow entirely. Everyone to the upper decks. Roar shouted. If the charges blow clean, we might have enough time till he didn't finish because the deck plates under our feet suddenly bulged upward, bending the steel like it was tin. Bolts shot free, clanging across the floor. The bulge shifted, moved toward the wall, then slammed against it, denting it outward. Celia was crying openly now, whispering, "It's coming in. It's coming in." Roar grabbed her arm, hauling her toward the exit. "Move." We ran, the sound of metal deforming, chasing us up the stairwell. The vibration in the air was constant now, a single note that seemed to resonate inside my skull. The timer ticked down in my head. For minutes, maybe less. On the upper deck, the cold hit like a slap. The wind had picked up, whipping snow and ice shards across the platform. The horizon was gone, swallowed by a wall of dark cloud. Out on the water, the ice shelf was cracking, huge slabs shifting and tilting like the surface was breathing. Roar was shouting orders to seal off the lower levels. But I barely heard him. My eyes were drawn to the water directly below us. The blue glow had spread up the array pipes, coiling around them like veins of light. It pulsed in time with the vibrations, each beat stronger than the last. And then, in the middle of the glow, something moved, something impossibly large. It was like the ocean itself had shifted. At first, all I could see was movement, a massive swell rising from directly beneath the rig. But it wasn't just water. The glow wasn't diffused anymore. Concentrated, curling around something solid. Something so huge my brain couldn't decide where it ended. It moved with terrifying patience, each pulse of light running along its surface like veins under skin. Roar was yelling over the wind, eyes on the timer. "Harris. Status. 3 minutes." Harris shouted back from the hatch. His voice was snatched by the gale, but I could still hear the panic in it. Another crack split the ice shelf beside us, a jagged line racing away toward the horizon. The sound was deep, drawn out, like the earth itself was groaning. I gripped the railing to keep my balance as the rig shifted again, one of the main supports groaning under strain. A shape broke the surface just for an instant. Black, slick, ridged with lines of faintly glowing blue. It wasn't a head or a limb or anything my mind could map to a living creature. It was like part of a wall had decided to rise out of the water. The glow along it pulsed again, and the pulse in the air matched it perfectly. Chow stumbled to my side, gripping the rail, his voice tight. "That's not just in the scar. That is the scar." Before I could ask what the hell he meant, the wind shifted and a deep, hollow roar rolled over us. Not loud in volume, but massive in weight, like the sound came from everywhere at once. The air in my lungs seemed to shiver with it. Down below, the glow spread further up the array pipes, and one of them burst open with a deafening crack, spewing scalding water high into the air. Steam tore away in the wind, carrying with it flecks of stone. Black stone carved in those same kneeling figures we'd seen in the binder. 2 minutes. Harris called, voice breaking. The vibration under my boots was relentless now. It wasn't just sound. It was inside me, rattling my ribs, making my teeth ache. My vision swam every time the pulse hit. Roar came up behind me, shouting over the roar of wind and water. "Once Lazarus goes, we have to be above deck. Anything below will be gone in seconds." I forced myself to nod. My eyes locked on the dark water below. That's when I saw them again. Those pale bioluminescent shapes from the array shaft. But there weren't dozens now. There were hundreds, maybe thousands. They streamed upward in a slow, spiraling column like a reverse whirlpool. And with each movement, the pulses in the air grew stronger. Celia appeared beside Rafi, her hair plastered to her face, eyes glassy. "It's begging," she said flatly. "It's begging us not to bury it." Roar spun on her. "It's a manipulation. She shook her head slow and deliberate. No, it's not lying. It's afraid. That hit me harder than I expected. This thing, whatever it was, wasn't supposed to feel anything. Not in a way we could relate to, but the way she said it, I almost believed her. The glow from below was so bright now it reflected off the underside of the ice, turning the world under the rig into a distorted mirror of blue and black. I could feel the heat rising from it in waves, melting thin crusts of frost from the railings. Brace yourselves. Roar roared. A shock wave hit us before the charges even went off. Something from below, pushing the entire rig upward a fraction, then letting it drop back with a stomach-lurching jolt. Steel screamed under the strain, and a sound like tearing fabric but on a planetary scale echoed from the water. 00020. The roar came again, louder this time, reverberating through the ice and air alike. Celia dropped to her knees, hands over her ears, shaking her head violently. It's not ready. It's not ready. She screamed. I knelt beside her, gripping her shoulders. What's not ready? She looked at me with tears running clean lines through the frost on her cheeks. It's not supposed to wake up yet. Before I could process that, the charges went off. The explosion wasn't a bang. It was a detonation you felt before you heard. Deep rolling. More like a collapsing mountain than a blast. The deck beneath us heaved, and the railing jolted so hard it wrenched at my hands. Out on the ice, fissures shot outward in every direction, racing faster than my eyes could follow. The swell beneath us dropped away, and for a heartbeat, I thought it was over. Then the water erupted. A column of black and blue tore upward, dwarfing the rig, blotting out the already dark sky. Shards of ice the size of trucks rained down into the ocean, some smashing into the rig with bone-shaking impacts. The sound was everywhere, a deafening roar that drowned out my own thoughts. Through the chaos, I could see it moving, massive coils shifting in the column, each one lined with that pulsing glow. The trench walls must have collapsed. But whatever was inside had not been buried. Roar was shouting something, pointing toward the lifeboat stations. But the wind and the roar swallowed his words. Harris grabbed Celia, half dragging her across the deck while Rafe was already yanking free the emergency release on one of the lifeboats. I ran to help, my boots slipping on ice and seawater. Another shock wave hit, nearly knocking me flat. The glow pulsed brighter, so bright it burned in my vision when I blinked. As I reached the lifeboat, I looked back one last time at the center of the scar. The column of water and light was collapsing back into the ocean. But not naturally, more like it was being pulled. And in that moment, just before it vanished completely, I saw it. A single enormous eye, black as the trench itself, staring straight at us from beneath the water. Then it was gone. The lifeboat dropped into the water with a teeth-rattling splash, and Rafe gunned the engine. Behind us, the rig groaned one final time. The sound of twisting steel and tearing welds was swallowed by another roar. And then silence. We didn't look back again. We didn't stop moving until the rig was nothing but a faint shape against the jagged horizon of ice and black water. Even then, none of us spoke. The little lifeboat engine hummed under Rafe's white-knuckled grip, carrying us over swells that were still too big for comfort. The wind had died, but the air was heavy, almost damp, like the world was holding its breath again. Behind us, the sky above where Oceanic Driller 7 had been was lit from below. A strange shifting glow under the ice. Faint, but impossible to miss. Every so often, pulsed. A heartbeat I could feel in the soles of my feet. Even here, Celia sat slumped beside me, her eyes fixed on nothing. Her lips were moving, but no sound came out. I leaned closer. Celia, She blinked like she just remembered I was there. It didn't follow us. She whispered. I didn't know if she meant it as reassurance or a warning. Rourke, sitting across from us, shook his head slowly. It's not done. His voice was hollow, like he'd been shouting for hours. We didn't bury it. We just told it we exist. No one answered that. The hours that followed blurred together. Ice shifting. The boat weaving through cracks in the shelf. Each of us taking turns at the tiller while the others scanned the horizon. We saw no rescue craft. No helicopters. No one was coming for us. The nearest inhabited station was hundreds of miles away. And the ice around us shifted too fast to chart a straight course. Sometime in the endless twilight, I caught movement under the ice. Not the glow. It was gone now. We're hiding. But a shadow, broad and slow, pacing us far below. My first thought was to point it out. My second was to keep my mouth shut. I didn't want to watch the others' faces if they saw it. 2. By the time we reached a section of open water, we were down to 9. The cold, the exhaustion, and the weight of what we'd left behind had eaten through us. Harris was gone. Slipped overboard during a shift change. No splash. No shout. Just gone. Chow never woke up after his last nap. His body cold before any of us noticed. We pushed on. On the 3rd day, we saw land. Just a dark smudge at first. Then jagged cliffs of ice and rock rising out of the water. There was no sign of habitation. No radio towers. No lights. But it was solid ground, and that was enough. We beached the boat on a narrow strip of frozen shoreline. The ice crunching under our boots as we hauled it up far enough that the tide wouldn't take it. The cold here was sharper. Meaner than on the rig. No steel walls to cut the wind. Roar took stock of our supplies. We can last maybe 4 days if we ration, he said. Voice flat. What happens in 4 days? Rafi asked, though I think we all knew. Before Roar could answer, Celia turned toward the sea. Listen, she said. We froze. At first, there was nothing. Just the wind pushing against the cliff face. Then it came. Faint. Distant. But unmistakable. Pulse. Slow. Deep. Rolling under the ice and into the rock beneath our feet. Roar's shoulders dropped. It's here. Rafi swore, running a hand down his face. We can't outrun it. Not out here. The pulse came again. A little stronger this time. And with it, words. Not in any language I'd ever heard. But they slid under my skin all the same, curling into my thoughts like smoke. For a moment, I thought I understood them. Then the meaning was gone, replaced by the cold certainty that whatever was speaking knew exactly who we were. Celia was smiling faintly now, her eyes bright in a way that made my stomach twist. It's not angry anymore, she said softly. It's curious. Roar moved toward her, his boots crunching on the frost. Step away from the water. She didn't. You don't have to be afraid of it, she said, her voice drifting like she was half asleep. It's been alone for so long. That's why it called us. It didn't call us. I snapped. We drilled into it. The smile faded from her face. But she didn't look away from the sea. Same thing. Another pulse. Stronger now. My knees felt weak under it. Somewhere beneath the ice, a faint blue shimmer pulsed back like the slow blink of a colossal eye. Roar reached for her arm. She stepped into the water before he could touch her. It was so fast none of us could react. 1 second she was ankle deep. The next she was gone. Pulled under without a splash. The surface was still unbroken except for the faint ripple of that same blue light moving away from shore. We stood there staring at the empty water. Roar's jaw clenched. We keep moving, he said finally. North along the coast. If it wanted us dead, it would have taken us already. We packed what little we had left and began walking. The pulse followed, slow and steady, like a drum beat in the bones of the earth. By the fourth night, I could hear it in my dreams. No words now, just the beat, closer each time I woke. On the morning of the fifth day, I woke to silence. No pulse, no shimmer, just the hiss of wind and the endless white ahead. For the first time since the rig went down, I thought maybe, just maybe, it had let us go. We never saw Roar again. He took the first watch that night and was gone by morning, his footprints leading straight to the shoreline and ending there. When the ice finally broke enough for a patrol ship to reach us, there were only 3 of us left. Me, Rafi, and one of the deckhands whose name I didn't even know before this. They wrapped us in blankets, asked us questions we didn't answer, and told us no wreckage from Oceanic Driller 7 had been found. 2 weeks later, I was back on the mainland. The doctors told me the headaches and the ringing in my ears would fade in time. They didn't. The pulse is still there, faint, tucked just under the edge of hearing. Sometimes when it's quiet enough, I can almost make out the words. And sometimes I think I hear Celia's voice among them,